The Faces were probably, well, every musician's, well, not every musician, but many musicians' favourite bands, because they seemed to be having such a good time doing it. And I saw them, I thought, oh, God, I'd love to be in that band.
That's it. And after having, well, the number one and all those hits with Steve, you then left to join Rod Stewart, who you've mentioned a couple of times there. I mean, first of all, how did that chance come about?
Well, I guess I really owe that one to Steve.
Okay.
Maybe even another step is Linda Lewis, who was my wife at that time, a great singer, a great artist. And in fact, funny enough, I went to see Rod Stewart Tuesday night, that's a couple of nights ago, and at the O2. And there was a picture up of him wearing some outlandish outfit that he put up for fun. And in the background was Linda Lewis. And I said to my daughter who was with me, I said, look, there's Linda. And at that point, he broke into Do You Think I'm Sexy? And the high melody of that riff, which is Linda singing. So I had two goes at Linda that night, two moments to think about her. So she was doing a record, and Cat Stevens was producing it. And I'm sorry about all the name dropping, but unfortunately, these are the people involved. So he was doing this session, and he wanted to produce a couple of tracks for Linda. So he wanted to do it in LA, and we were living in England. And he called me up and he said, "I'd like you to play guitar on it." I said, "Great, okay." So Lynn and I nip over to LA, and we cut the tracks. I think we cut 3, and I was playing with some great players. Some of those guys over there, Ollie Brown and Willie Weeks, and oh God, they were great. I mean, I was so out of my depth. I was bricking it. Anyway, I get my parts done, and it seems all right. And then Linda's going to do some vocals, so I've got the afternoon off. So I bumped into Rod Stewart some time earlier, and I thought, he's putting a band together. I should give him a call. So I called him, and he wasn't there. And Britt Eklund answered the phone, which was even better. And I said, "Okay, I'm looking for Rod Stewart. You give him this number and ask him to call me back if he wants still looking for a guitar player." And he called back, and I got an audition the next day and got the job. So, So I know why the Steve Harley connection was that he'd seen me play with Steve Harley at the Roxy. He came to the Roxy just because he likes to go and see what's going on.
Yeah,
and saw me play, and obviously thought I think he liked the hat I was wearing. I think that was the reason for the job.
Wear a good hat in future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to wear one of those sort of flat caps, the Peaky Blinders thing.
Yes, indeed. Now, what was well, obviously it couldn't have been that much of a difficult decision to decide to join Rod, given everything. But how difficult was it leaving Steve on the back of the success and the relationship you built up with him?
Yeah, well, that was awful, that part. And it's so ironic how these things turn out. Mm-hmm. Steve was the only writer in Cockney Rebel, and there was no room for me to write. And as I explained earlier, songwriting has been part of my life forever. So I missed out on the opportunity to first of all to make that creative contribution to the band, but also because if financially, if you get a hit, it's kind of a pension. Steve will tell you about Make Me Smile. So when Rod asked me if I joined the band, I said, "Will there be any writing?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "We'll be writing within the band." He wanted in those days to not recreate the Faces, but to carry the spirit of the Faces he wanted to carry forward. Because he liked back in those days. It was in 1976. He'd mostly been in bands. He'd been in the Jeff Beck group, and the Faces followed that. And before that, he was in bands like Steam Packet, and so he was not Rod Stewart's solo artist. Mm-hmm. That came later. But when he put this band together, he wanted that feeling. So I started writing with him. Pretty well as soon as we got the first few gigs out of the way, and we were touring an album called A Night on the Town. So we were playing those tunes for the first few months, and then we went to the studio and made our own record. And that had Hot Legs on it, and You're in My Heart, and a bunch of hits. Really, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was a good record. It was loads of fun. I mean, the Faces were probably every musician's, well, not every musician, but many musicians' favourite bands, because they seemed to be having such a good time doing it. And I saw them. I thought, oh, God, I'd love to be in that band. There's no way I'd get rid of Ronnie Wood. And somehow Ronnie Wood got rid of himself.
So yeah, with all the songs that you wrote with Rod, I mean, do you have any favorites that stand out for you?
Definitely Forever Young. And there's some album tracks that I'm very fond of. The Best Days of My Life is one I like. Never Give Up on a Dream, which we gave the royalties to the Terry Fox Foundation. That's that guy who had cancer in his leg and had his leg amputated. He was an athlete. And bless him, I mean, what a guy. He then decided to raise money for cancer. He would run across Canada, not walk, run across Canada with one leg. I mean, what a man. What a man. And sadly, the cancer came back on that journey, and it claimed him before he finished.
Oh, no.
It was a tragic story, but I mean, what an inspiration. So Rod and I wrote this song called Never Give Up on a Dream.
Fantastic.
So there's quite a few little songs lying around that weren't hits, but I'm very fond of. Brighton Beach, I wrote with him a few years back now, and that was his reintroduction to songwriting again. He stopped writing for about 15 years. I went round his house one day, because he and I are really, really old friends. We've been mates for 40 odd years. I went round his house and I had a guitar with me. I think it was at his request. I don't know why he asked me to bring a guitar. Well, obviously it was to pretend to write. So we sat down after lunch, and just as I suggested, the fun way to do it is to sit together and come up with something. And I played a few chords, and he suddenly started to sing, and I followed his melody, and he followed my chords, and suddenly we've got a song. You know, that's the way. It's that easy or that difficult.
I love that.
Choose one. Tick one
It's
box.
that easy. It's that easy. Just touching on something that you mentioned in a previous interview, you said one of your highlights of your career was playing in Rio with Rod. I think you said you'd never felt such energy. Can you talk to us about that day and that experience you had?
Well, there's something about an enormous crowd. They bring something to you that you're not going to get any other way when you get on a stage in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. I want to point out, this is not the Guinness Book of Records 3 million people on whatever that beach was.
Copacabana, yeah.
Copacabana Beach. Yeah. This is Rock in Rio, which was, I don't know, 300,000 people. It was huge. You couldn't, from the stage, you could not see where they finished. It was unbelievable. And something went wrong with one of my guitars, and I actually ended up not playing for a bit and just singing backgrounds. And I felt so comfortable up there in front of all those people. I didn't care. It wasn't like, oh my God, I just sang and just loved. There was a great amount of love and affection on that in that space. And I really like those. I really like those enormous gigs. But it comes with its own difficulties. But there's no sound check because you can't have a sound check.
Of course.
So you rely on your crew immensely, who are that touring level. They are very, very experienced and really great. I mean, the crew, I can't say enough great things about road crew, because they are great fun and they're really, really dedicated. They have a tough job. They've got to be sometimes setting up at 8 in the morning, and they don't tear down till gone midnight. It's brutal, but they're fantastic.
Absolutely.
I always love the crew that I worked with.